Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Alrav from Quebec, Canada, the author and creator of Alcatraz the Protector / Alcatraz le Protector, and welcome back to another installment of the sketchbook tour series, episode 3, in which I'll be showing off even more art from my sketchbook, as well as talking about a bunch of stuff. So for today's topic, as always, this is part 3 of my story about how I became a comic book creator. So I've already talked about my childhood phase and my teenager phase, which was my dark age of gaming. So now for the final part of this particular trilogy, it is time to talk about my adulthood and why I created Alcatraz the Protector / Alcatraz le Protector. So you can read the first issue for free in the blog comics on my Substack, so the links are available as always in the description below or on my channel's page. So why did I become a comic book creator? The short and sweet answer is that, well, it was to create this particular comic book that I made first and foremost, and it is the same reason why I make videos like these, to promote my work. So since I sort of run out of material, that's when I decided to showcase more of my sketchbook tours, as well as showing off my comic book page as I made them. So there's a little bit of me who wanted to shift toward more no editing style videos, so I can be more spontaneous and I think. So I'm sort of practicing that front. And it's also a practice for my English role as well, since I haven't used it in quite a while prior to starting making these sort of videos. So for part 3, well, the reason I became a comic book creator is for Alcatraz first and foremost, and that's the reason why. When I spent my teenage phase playing video games and such. When I became an adult, and that was the beginning of the emergence of all these smart devices and these social networks out there, and how life started moving really fast and felt more and more like it started to become a video game of sort. That's when it really started to feel like this whole thing started moving so fast and so uncontrollably, and it started feeling more and more like the time that I'd spent on these video games back when I was a teenager. But I think the one thing that really put a spark that ignited a fuse of sort was this particular incident that took place in 2012. There were this pop culture critic who made a series of videos about the representation of women and stuff, and she made a crowdfunding campaign to fund a sequel focusing on those in video games. And after that, there's been this cyber mob of people that formed and attempted to orchestrate a defamation campaign of sort in an attempt to silence her. And this particular incident became known as the equivalent of the 9/11 in the realm of media. It split the world in two, and there were a lot of growing pressure for creators, both big and small, to start catering to the content of our videos to the letter, or else to be presumably persecuted in a way. And everything from that point onwards sort of became a slippery slope of one bad incident after the other. So it's kind of like how the 2000s was defined by the 9/11, the 2010 was defined by this particular incident with the pop culture critic, the 2020s was defined by the pandemic, which I have yet to have recovered myself. But then after that, who knows what else will bring. There's probably going to be even more stuff. Maybe And the next crisis will be in 2030s, and it will be something related to AI or something, simply because companies are spending billions upon billions with no end in sight to try to outdo the author, and who knows what's going to happen. Maybe a big computer crash will happen that's going to put a reset on everything. So there's no way to know entirely, but in the context that when I seen that incident with the pop culture critic and stuff, that's when I came up with the idea of doing this sort of video game that allow players to do a real thing with real consequences, using the entire world as their playground, and that became the basis for the main antagonist of my comic book series, Zextron. And since then I became obsessed with the idea. I didn't do it right away. For a long time I kept the idea buried inside of me because I thought it was too dumb and stupid to exist, so that's why I didn't do it. But as time went on, after watching the Hong Kong 97 review from the Angry Video Game Nerd, another spark ignited inside of me. I sort of wrote a first draft of my first issue as a joke, and after that I became even more obsessed. Not only I started revisiting the idea on occasions, I also started doodling the world and the characters that I envisioned for this particular sci-fi dystopia of sort I created. And as I kept working on it, the project became more and more elaborate and ambitious, until it took the shape, the definitive form that it is now is. So to give you a context, if you want the full story on that, the making of series of the first issue of Alcatraz, I've already made these type of videos for the entire thing, so you can watch this out at any point for the full story. But needless to say that it was by watching the events that were unfolding in the world through the beginning of smart devices and social network, the gamification of life itself, with the emergence of cyber mobs and cancel culture. That's what inspired the threat of Zextron, and that's why I created Alcatraz to fight off Zextron. And from that point onward, that became my reason to create this particular comic book universe that I created. And even though I took a break, sometime even yearly at point, it was all part of the process, so that every time I would try to cancel it, it will simply come back stronger and stronger. So that was the sign for me to do it for real, and eventually that I did. So there's one thing that for sure, it probably would have been better if I'd done it much sooner, but at the same time there's no guarantee what the quality could have been. I think what held me back for so long to be able to make this particular comic book was how I simply did not have the confidence in my art or my writing skills at that point to be able to pull ahead, and so there are many things that could have gone wrong. So that's the reason why the second best thing for doing this type of project is now, because you can't have anyone else to rely or depend upon. You need to take action and do it yourself, and that's exactly what I ended up doing. So with that being said, thanks for watching. As always, all the Alcatraz the Protector / Alcatraz the Protector stuff can be found on my Substack. The links are available in the description below or on my channel's page. And as always, the first issue is available for free alongside the Becominc companion, and the second issue is coming out sometime in the first half of the year. So with that being said, thanks for watching, and we'll see one another very soon. enjoy the reading.